Hi, guys. Those of you that have known me and us for a while, I'm Niaz, and I'm one of the co founders of Millennial Money, of which Loose Change is a part of. Now, over the last 5 years, I've been on the internet talking about money, trying to teach people about money and really engage people with the conversation of money. And I'd like to say we've built a bit of a reputation now, 5 years in, where people trust us when it comes to personal finance and some of the recommendations that we might make. But I have a little story to tell you about myself. I don't know how it happened, or maybe I do, but I realized that people started to associate me as like the money guy, right? I must know a lot about money. And I'd say I probably do know quite a bit about money now, right? But that wasn't always the case. The reason we got to where we are today, for me, is that I wasn't the best when it came to managing my money. My story goes like this. I thought I followed all of the rules, right? I followed everything that my parents told me to do, which was, and I'm sure many of you can relate, go to school, focus, get good grades, go to a good uni, get yourself a good degree, and then get yourself a good job, and your life will be sorted. Now, I found myself jumping through all of those hoops. Many of us were sold the same tale. And increasingly, I found myself getting into more and more debt the first few years that I was working. I never really spoke about it. I think there was a lot of shame attached to money, particularly in the UK, and then maybe even more so in our communities. And I just remember getting more and more stressed, thinking, how can I be so stupid? I just don't understand where my money's going. Why don't I have more of it? Why do I have less of it? I'm earning more and I don't seem to have any money. Why? Then I realized that loads of my friends were in the same position. And none of us were actually ever taught how to manage our money. Some people are lucky, they're really sensible, or they have had conversations around the table growing up. But actually, when it came to my own relationship with money, I had loads of mistakes that I needed to shake off. And I just convinced myself for a long time that maybe this whole money thing isn't for me. I'm not meant to be good with money. I'm just not good with money. And I had applied that label to myself. And then it was only until a few years into my career when I realized that, okay, I need to make some changes. And slowly, through a period of trial and error and self-learning and being a bit more open with people that I trusted, getting advice, doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of research, I realized that this whole money thing doesn't need to be so complex, right? And then I started to get a bit more confidence, right? I got myself out of debt and I was actually making a decent amount of money. I started to learn about investing. And a couple of years into investing, I really thought I knew what I was doing. And then after that, I think a few years after that, I launched this brand, Millennial Money, with one of my best friends. And now we're teaching people about money, right? Now I really know what I'm doing. There's people online who believe me when it comes to what to do with their money. Now, this goes on for another year or so, and I've learned how to really build up a decent, very well diversified, structured investment portfolio. And then I had a moment of realization where I was like, okay, wait, I'm Muslim. There's some instructions here on how I need to manage my money. And I wasn't entirely sure whether the money that I'd built up really aligned to my faith-based values. It's not really something I ever considered before. And actually, as I began to become a bit more informed about my own faith and practice and more resolute in my practice, I think I realized that there was a lot of things that I hadn't considered. Now, I had to go back and reverse engineer how I manage my money. This is a common story amongst quite a lot of people, particularly Muslims, and I know people of other faiths as well. But we have specific requirements and guidelines when it comes to our money. And I was only learning that after I'd already thought that I'd solved the whole money conundrum and understood money and I'd completed the money game. I then had to reverse engineer and realized that there was so much that I had to change about how I'd built up my wealth and what was permissible and what wasn't. This was a foray into the world of personal Islamic finance. And had it not been for the resources that were available to me at the time with channels like Islamic Finance Guru and in the advent now of new channels forming like Nisba, who are our guests in this episode, I would really, really have been quite lost. And I'd be back to square one, feeling like, wow, I don't know what any of this is. Educating yourself on what to do with your money and how to grow your money and how to utilize your money in the right way is something that we should all take accountability for. And hopefully in this episode, we can explain to you why that it's so important to do so and how you might be able to utilize your wealth in the right way. So this episode is informative, I hope. There's points where it is funny discussions between us as well. I have a great amount of respect for my guests who I'm excited for you to meet, who are building a brand new financial education platform, and it's specifically targeted to people who want to grow their wealth while still being compliant to their faith-based values.
I'm a Muslim. I work in investments or whatever. And I didn't even know there was a whole Islamic investing scene.
But the word shariah scares a lot of people. To people that aren't Muslim, they'd be like, that can't be for me, right? It's not for me. And then people that are Muslim, their take is, oh, this is so restrictive. But what is it that makes something Sharia compliant when it comes to investment?
The very first thing to look at is...
So on this week's episode of Loose Change, I'm joined by Adil and Ahmed, founders of financial education platform Nisba.
Now, even if a company does operate in a halal sector, it still may not be halal to invest into.
Yeah.
And why is that? Well,
the big thing with money is it's not ours.
Yeah.
It doesn't belong to us.
We're
like custodians. We're simply looking after it.
If you were to speak to, just say, an audience of young Muslims, right, how would you advise them to approach their relationship with their money, knowing what you know now?
One thing I think that young people have as an issue.
With the expert help of Adil and Ahmed, by the end of this episode, you should understand the basics of Sharia compliant investing, what it means, how it works, its principles and application, and why it seems to be performing so well when compared to less restricted and less ethical products available on the market. A quick shout to thank our sponsors for this episode, PensionBee. As a leading online pension provider, PensionBee is on a mission to build pension confidence and create a world where everyone can enjoy a happy retirement. PensionBee offers a range of pension plans to suit different needs, including a tracker plan, which follows the global markets, a climate plan, which invests in companies actively reducing their carbon emissions, and a Sharia-compliant pension option. Their plans allow you to align your retirement savings with your values. If you're self-employed, PensionBee has you covered too. Their flexible pension plans are designed with you in mind, allowing you to contribute as much or as little as your income allows. You're in complete control of your retirement savings, and signing up only takes a few minutes. With PensionBee's easy-to-use app and website, you can combine your old pensions, make contributions, and even withdraw your money when the time comes. So if you're ready to take control of your retirement savings, download the PensionBee app today. And remember, as with all investments, your capital is at risk. Thanks again to PensionBee for supporting this episode. Now back to the episode. How's it been for you boys in the last couple of months then with Nisba?
Intense. It's funny because we did this talk with Nesta, which is another Islamic finance company. And
I know them. Come on, man, respect me.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
One of the questions to the CEO was, how do you manage the work-life balance? And it really hit me when he said it, when he answered it. He goes, you don't manage your work-life balance.
Yeah.
It's intense. It's crazy. And we have this other friend who's in the startup industry, and he's had 2 successful exits.
Wow.
And now he's thinking of going to work for a company.
How would you readjust to like after
That's what I said to
exit? Well, maybe he just wants to be a civilian again.
It's funny. His first thing was, I want to go work for a company and quiet quit. Like straight away. It's not that I actually want to go in and dig in and I just can't. I just want to chill out, get my sick days, get my holiday days.
That's so funny.
But I was like, you can't do it. Like someone who's never had a job, you've always been the boss.
Oh, so
he left uni. It was quite cool because he left uni. And his dad gave him the ultimatum. He's like, look, you need to make a grad salary within 12 months. Otherwise, you go and get a grad job. And alhamdulillah, he did it. Never looked back.
That's so good.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Some people need a bit of that pressure, I think, to make it happen.
Yeah, and I think you're right.
Yeah.
It depends though. Like my job is mainly sales. There's absolutely zero pressure there.
In sales?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like a weird kind of company.
He says sales, but it's not like you're not going out and selling a normal product.
Yeah. Still.
It's finance sales.
Yeah, I know, but still.
So you're sat behind a Bloomberg.
I mean, if you're good at it, then I guess you take off the pressure.
Yeah.
But I want to find out a little bit about you both individually before we sort of like dive into Nisba. I know we've spoken a little bit about your journeys as well, but would you like to give us an insight into your individual financial journeys? Were you always this clued in when it came to money?
You go.
Oh, have I always been clued in? Well, I mean, I studied finance at university.
Yeah. Where?
Durham.
Nice.
Actually wanted to go into robotics. That's a long story. That's a long story. But alhamdulillah, got into finance and then went into banking for a year. At that time, I didn't care what I did whatever. I just thought I was a big shot. Let me go into banking. Let me, do whatever. I had no idea about industries or jobs in finance. So I thought I was quite clued up. And one of the desks I was on at the bank I worked at was an FX research desk.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, FX. People make money off FX. So I started analyzing charts because that was my job. The guy I was working with was a technical analyst.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is sick. So we were sitting down analyzing charts. So my first bit of actual trading or investing, it's not actually investing, but let's call it investing/trading, was actually trading currencies.
Okay.
Spread betting currencies, completely impermissible in Islam, and losing lots of money.
I've got a load of people like that in my DMs, so yeah, they can do that always, bro.
And then what happened at said bank?
It didn't quite work out there, and then you move on to other places. And the thing is, I feel like you always kind of you hear things as you move forward. And the next company I joined was an oil trading company. I thought, oh, now I know about oil trading. But the reality is very different to when you're trading specific strategies for a firm. I don't know if I dabble much in oil trading, but then when I moved to my current job, which is a brokerage role, lots of people talk about stocks, and I always had this idea at the time where if I invest my money to make 7 or 8% per year, it's not going to change my life.
Yeah.
What I need to do is I need to quadruple, 10x my money on the trade. Yeah, and then 10x that again. Yeah. So what did I do? I looked for ultra small caps. I'm talking like companies worth less than 10 million, worth less than 1 million, and I would pump into them hard.
Oh my god!
And I remember having
penny stocks and AIM listed.
Yeah, like AIM listed companies in the UK. And I remember having a chat with my CEO, the chairman of the company. I go, yeah. This is my strategy. And he goes, how's it going? I go, so far so good. Thing is, I was only in them for a few months at the time. So at that time, they hardly moved. And there was this one AIM stock I really wanted to buy. But sometimes the bid offer spread is so wide because they're so illiquid that I was buying it 10% above market. And I was like, I'm not buying that one. Anyway, all went terribly. I lost loads of money. But sometimes pain is the biggest teacher.
Yeah.
And now I do it all the right way.
Okay, nice. But luckily that wasn't really your own money that you were...
That was my money.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is
trying to get rich quick.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all my money.
Well, see, this is a common story in the our end of the personal finance community. We learn from making mistakes because I'm closer to you than someone that's always known the right way.
Yeah.
And made all the mistakes. What about you, Adam?
To be honest, similar sort of story. I did study finance as well, accounting and finance, but I didn't really have a clue about a lot of this stuff, so I just bought like random stocks. Like my friend was really into it, so I was like, "Give me your top 10, and I'll just copy it." So I went into Hargreaves, Lansdowne, paid, and I put in like £20 per stock.
Yeah.
And it's like
and that was a fee,
£7.50 dealing charge.
Yeah.
So I'm left with like £12, and obviously it doesn't grow. Like realistically, what's £12 going to grow on? Like,
yeah.
And so I left. I sold all of those and came out, and then like I saved a bit of money because I'd stopped investing in like stocks and stuff. So I was like, let me just save. And then a friend came to me with like an opportunity. I was like, this sounds really good. They bought some land that they got some planning permission on, and they were going to turn into like 4 houses.
Nice.
And I was like, win-win. Like it's property, it's land, it's safe. So I put in like basically all of my life savings, and just disappeared.
Oh my gosh.
Like super awkward as well. Like it really damages the relationship.
Oh no.
And I was just like, yeah, cool. From this point on, none of this nonsense.
Yeah.
Let me learn. And then alhamdulillah, I met Ahmed.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely stole everything from his brain. Because a lot of the stuff just didn't make sense. Like when I was working in the school, people were always talking about stuff like ISAs, LISAs.
Yeah.
And I was like, sounds haram.
Yeah.
Like, it just sounds like it's interesting. It sounds haram.
Yeah.
Let me just stay away.
Yeah.
And then when you stay away, you really miss out.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but I think that's it. It's just learning. You just need to learn some stuff.
Yeah.
And then you'll be okay.
That's true with so many things in life. If you can invest the time to learn a bit more about it, it's funny because nowadays there's so much stuff available on ChatGPT. With this AI stuff that you almost feel like you don't need to learn.
I know it does take a lot of the think power away, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was down the other day, and all my colleagues were like, I don't know what to do. I forgot how to think of myself.
It's mad.
I can't write an email without it.
Yeah,
I have to put my email through it to be like, okay, can you please make this more concise? Yeah. Can you switch the tone on it?
Yeah.
Like I can't do that by myself anymore.
It's insane. I've seen because so my sister's at university now, And I've got a few cousins who are like much younger and they're at university, and I've seen them like during their revision phases, and when they just defer to ChatGPT when they don't. By the way, my sister's at Oxford. Yeah, alhamdulillah. But my cousin, he's at Imperial, right? So these are some of the best, and they just defer to ChatGPT on a lot of occasions.
It's just a big cheat code now.
Yeah,
like, how can you write a piece of coursework and actually test someone's ability to write coursework?
It's mad.
You can't.
Yeah, it's true.
It's nice though. It does make life a lot easier in a lot of places.
Yeah.
It does. How much time was wasted before? It has made me more productive, to be fair.
But it's just like that thing. Have you ever read the book Sapiens?
Yeah.
And it goes through like, oh yeah, you think you're saving loads of time. Like we saved loads of time now going from writing letters to email, but we're on email all day.
Exactly, it's true.
Like, and now it's like, oh yeah, we're more productive. But we just spend more time doing stuff, the same thing.
Yeah, it's mad.
There was this article today I read. I think it was on the FT, and it was talking about the technological advancement. And it's like, yeah, now you've got social media, but you waste all your time on it. And you got processed foods, but they make you unhealthy. And you got Netflix, but it's also another waste of time. It's like technological advancement for what?
It's true.
Obviously, there's so many things which are good. I'm not going to knock everything, but there's a lot out there that we're doing with our life and our time. And it's like, are we happier?
Yeah, it's true.
Are we moving? Are we really moving forward with all this extra stuff?
There's some comfort, I think, that is destructive, and I actually want to touch on this later because of our community's preference for things like property and how economically it might have made the UK a bit more unproductive, actually. But there are some comfort that actually destroys you in the over the long term, but through like short-term ease as well.
That's just naturally how the brain wants to work, right? It likes to pick the lazy approach.
Yeah, and the nafs actually. So yeah.
It makes sense. And then, we have all the tools now to help us do it.
I know. But with you guys, when it came to your personal, like dealing with your own money and finances and like your relationship with it all, was there a specific turning point? Like, was there a moment for either of you, maybe for you, and you were like, okay, I'm going in on these penny stocks. What am I doing?
I think for me,
do you remember a moment you're like, okay, I actually just need to like sort things out now?
For me, it was when I started to make sure all my investments were Sharia compliant.
Okay.
When they were all halal, it's like, okay, wait a second, I can't have this, I can't have that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know at the time there were companies out there which screen stocks for you to tell you if they're Sharia compliant or not. And I just thought, oh, there's a halal fund here. Why is my pension invested into?
Yes.
Let me check. Is there a halal? Oh, there is a halal fund available.
Yeah.
Why don't I just move my pension to that?
Okay.
And thought, okay, and then I started slowly doing it to all my other investments. And I was thinking, I'm a Muslim. I work in investments or whatever, and I didn't even know there was a whole Islamic investing scene.
I've had similar experience.
I have one big moment when my son was born. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do the same thing. Like, I want to make sure he has something tangible by the time he's like 18 or 20 or whatever. So I was like, let me learn about investing properly and doing a Sharia compliant way. And that's where I found like Wahed.
Yes.
I was like, that's the easiest way for me to start.
Yeah.
I'll start.
Yeah.
I'll automate it, and then I'll learn from there.
Yeah.
And then that's when I learned.
I relate to this so much because I think this happens to a lot of people. So like, we start from unconscious incompetence, right? We're like, okay, we have no idea what we're doing. We don't know anything. We're making all the mistakes there is to make. And then let's say we moved up the scale. Let's go a few years, the three of us, and then we're like, okay, we kind of know what we're doing with money now. Like, I'm making a bit of money. I've put some away. I think I know what I'm doing. I've managed to make a bit. Like, I'm online now talking about money. So this was my experience. And then I was like, okay, I've been investing for a good few years now. Like, I feel fairly confident. Like, I've experimented, I've lost some, I've gained some, I've diversified my portfolio across a range of different asset classes. I know what I'm doing now. And then I had a moment where I was like, wait, I'm Muslim. That was literally my moment. I was like, wait, there's more rules. So then I was like, oh, okay, is my money is it permissible? How I'm holding? And I had that moment of like, okay, now I have to reverse engineer and learn what's allowed for us and available, and how to then reapply that. And now, obviously, coming out the other side, I feel much more comfortable in my own journey. But it's so funny because there's founders within the whole Muslim fintech space as well that have had a similar journey themselves. So I think I relate to that big time.
But it makes sense, right? It's much easier if you understand like the principles in the beginning from a non-Sharia compliant point of view, to then learn that.
Yeah.
Whereas if, like, most Muslims are coming in today with not understanding investing and then not understanding the like Sharia part of it as well. Like, it'd be way easier to teach non-Muslims today.
Yeah, 100%.
About how to like,
100%.
Sharia about invest.
100%. So it's funny you say that, because I think I know almost, I shouldn't say this, but I know a surprising amount of non-Muslims that are investing in a Sharia compliant way.
Yeah.
And I know lots of Muslims that don't invest at all, right? And this is what I think we're going to dive into today, is first of all, like, explain what Sharia compliant investing is, and actually what are the benefits, because I think a lot of the time we look at it as just a restrictive way of managing our money, but there's benefits and challenges as well to manage around, but I think people don't understand what it is, which I'm hoping that you guys can help us with that. But the word Sharia scares a lot of people, right? I think because of the Western advertising around it all is probably not the most helpful, but the way it screens products for us, we obviously have a different understanding to it. But what is it that makes something Sharia compliant when it comes to investment products? How would you approach that if you were trying to explain it?
The very first thing to look at is the industry that something's in. That's quite simple. I think a lot of people can understand that. Tobacco, gambling, alcohol, things like that. And I think there are certain industries that a lot of people don't want to invest in anyway.
Yeah.
And they don't really think about it if they're putting money into a S&P 500 tracker or a FTSE 100. They don't think, what are the actual companies my money is going into?
Yeah.
What companies is it supporting? So that's at a very basic level. And then when it starts to get a little bit more complicated, in the fact that even if a company doesn't operate in a non-halal sector, even if a company does operate in a halal sector, it still may not be halal to invest into.
Yeah.
And why is that? Well, the financial ratios might be a bit out. It might have too much debt.
Yeah.
It might make a bit of money from impermissible sources. Classic example is Tesco. Tesco is a company which sells stuff. A lot of it is fine. I mean, lots of people shop at Tesco or Sainsbury's. But at the same time, they sell alcohol. Okay. They sell cigarettes. Does that make it okay, or does it not make it okay? And this is when you start to have to explain to people that if a company makes a little bit of revenue from impermissible sources, it's still okay. Oh, wait a sec. How much? How much is it?
Yeah, okay.
It's 5%. Whoa. Where in the Quran, where in the Hadith does it say 5%? And this is when we start to get into a big debate. And it's just, we don't actually get into debates. I would say, look, if you want to find the information, it's out there. There's hours and hours long of videos and content and stuff that's out there that explains it very clearly. And you're not going to find it in the Quran. You're not going to find it in Hadith. It's something which is said by some of the shuyukh now, to make it accessible for Muslims to invest in a diversified way. And the 5% rule isn't even like hard-coded 5%. It depends kind of on the market that you're looking at in a way to allow you to invest in a diversified way. And if there were enough companies for Muslims to invest into that didn't have any income from any impermissible sources, then that 5% rule wouldn't even exist.
Yeah, true. So it's complex and nuanced, right? So when you actually like scrutinize what you're investing, it forces you to become a bit more intentional about what you're buying and what you're investing. Because the easy thing to do when you first learn about investing, right? And I'm sure most of us have been on this journey. We teach people is like, okay, start investing, right? And invest in a diversified way. Like spread your investment across as many assets as you can, as many companies, buy as many companies as you can. Easiest way to do that is to buy into a fund. People go for the ETFs, index trackers, and they buy into thousands of companies in one go. The complexity, like the realization that I had was, okay, cool. Okay, now I need to really consider which of these companies I can invest into. An easy way, let's say for someone who's just completely new to this concept of Sharia, whether they're Muslim or not, because obviously it doesn't have to exclude Muslims, right? It's meant to be an ethical screen. Would that be a good way to?
It's a tough one because in some regards, yes, it's definitely perhaps more ethical, but it depends on kind of how you define ethical.
Yeah,
because from the first layer, you would say, yes, it's more ethical in the sense that these companies are not allowed to have too much debt.
Yeah.
So they're structured in a way to not promote debt, which is better for society.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from like ethical from today's point of view, in terms of are they positively contributing to society?
Yeah.
Are they, green, ESG, all that sort of stuff? And even like the next level, which is, are they hurting certain territories?
Yeah.
Then it doesn't factor that in, unfortunately, because some like those screenings are a bit more subjective. But there are solutions coming out, and those solutions will continue to grow if more Muslims get involved.
Okay.
So that, So that's one of the key things. I think, yes, it is ethical, but perhaps not ethical in the way that people think.
Okay.
Well, I mentioned it to some of my colleagues actually. I go, oh, this is great. And you won't be investing in tobacco. You might not be investing in some arms companies. Wouldn't you love that? And also no alcohol. And they go, oh, wait a sec, I don't mind investing in alcohol.
Yeah.
Diageo and what the like. I was like, oh, okay. So maybe not all the ethical screens apply to everyone.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
But certainly to Muslims.
Yeah. I think I've been on like because when I speak to my colleagues about it as well, I'm like, the general gist is like we avoid industries like porn, gambling, alcohol, tobacco, weapons manufacturing. These are like obvious screens because they're things that you should avoid. And usually everyone's like, oh yeah, I don't really want to engage in those industries. Yeah. And it's true. Like, why would you?
Just stop the conversation there.
Yeah. and then also, by and large, the companies are supposed to be governed a bit better, and they're not meant to be highly leveraged with debt. So generally, you'd assume that these companies are better managed. Therefore, you'd hope that it correlates to better returns as well, which at the moment, present day, it seems like that's very much the case. But I think because people hear the word Sharia, and then they're like, oh no, the branding around it is scary. But actually, even engaging to explain what that means, it's funny because to people that aren't Muslim, they'd be like, that can't be for me, right? It's not for me. And then people that are Muslim, their take is, oh, this is so restrictive. So it's like approaching it from two different angles, but explaining to people maybe to help them understand the reasons why. It's structured in a certain way. I
had a colleague that I worked with super closely with, and we would always talk about money, like all different topics. And he's not religious, he's not Muslim. And I was like, yeah, my pension has like performed amazing. And he was like, well, just let me see. And then I showed him, and he was like, oh, and then literally instantly switched it over. He just switched his over to the HSBC Islamic Global Equity.
Yeah, it's mad, like, because it's sort of for a lot of people, it's like, okay, I want to make more money, and it seems like a more fairly more ethical way to invest. Like, why wouldn't I think there's people at that level who are like, yeah, well, like it's a no-brainer, right? To go for it. But I think it's important to actually explain that it's not exclusively for Muslims. It's a method of investing, right, with certain guidelines and parameters attached to it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one other area that they don't invest in is institutions that generate interest. So banks and a lot of financial institutions won't be included in those funds. And it's funny because some people look at the performance and like, oh wow, this fund has done well. But the reason it's done well is because it's so tech heavy, because so many other industries are excluded. So you, like you said, you do have the Alphabet, you do have the Microsoft, you have the Nvidia, you have the Apple, and they make up a huge proportion of that fund. So what a lot of people might not understand is what they're effectively doing is they're going into a relatively concentrated fund with only 100 different stocks in it, of which the top 10 holdings make up a huge proportion of the actual fund. So how did you make such great returns last year of over 20%? Because Nvidia did well. Yeah. Because Google did well. Because Microsoft did well. And what about this year? This year when, what was it called? DeepSeek. When DeepSeek came out and Nvidia dropped over 10%, I was thinking in my head, oh my God, all the Muslims with their money, all the Muslims have so much of their pension invested in Nvidia. And I think that's a huge issue. Yeah. Like when I went to move my pension, I'm still quite young, so I can have my pension 100% equities. But, you know, the non-Muslim options for like, oh, you have a bit of bonds, you have a bit of equities, you've got so many choices of different equity funds, tens of thousands of choices on other platforms. But as a Muslim, 10, 20, you got 10, 20 choices and like 3 or 4 Sukuk funds, which is like the Islamic version of bonds. And when it comes to your pension, at the time being, the majority of platforms don't even offer any kind of Sukuk, so no kind of safe investment. So you're defaulted to a relatively concentrated fund, which performs well in years that are good. Yeah. Especially years that the tech sector grows a lot. Mm-hmm. But then give it any sort of wobble. Give it something like DeepSeek. Yeah, DeepSeek. You're highly exposed, right? You are highly exposed, and I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. Especially when it comes to investing, they think, "Oh, this investment has done well. Let me stick money into it," without actually understanding the way investing works. Just because, and we actually made a video on this, and that fund, sorry to say, it was one of the worst performing funds in 2022 out of all the Islamic funds. It's volatility. Yeah. You cannot say this fund has done well this year. It will continue to do well in the future. Yeah. It's a long term, and these are the principles of like general investing as well, and they apply in the same way. I think as a step one, I think that's an important thing to understand.
Sharia compliant investing, yes, is an added layer, maybe like looking at our own journeys as well. But the same principles of investing apply, right?
Yeah.
You're investing for the long term, and you're having to be intentional about like how you're going to invest your money for the long term as well. And there's a point as well about financial exclusion for the Muslim community, which is probably worth touching on because of the, I guess, limited options in place. But I guess looking into like, just to clarify, things that are outside the bounds of Sharia compliance, because I think that would be worth explaining to people. So what would not be considered Sharia compliance? So what would be impermissible? What makes something impermissible? What are the things that make something impermissible?
So if we're removing equities now, so removing investing in businesses, other things that are impermissible.
Yeah, or it could include. So you mentioned interest bearing, or
so generally banks are off the list.
Weapons manufacturers, alcohol companies.
Pork industry is also
adult entertainment, gambling, things that are genuinely not good for society. Are kind of ruled out at the first strike. And then, like Ahmed said, there's the financial ratios, which just try and make sure that these companies are not, structured in a way where they're taking on too much debt, and then if they collapse, there's a knock-on effect.
Yes.
In effect.
What's funny about that is there's ratios out there, but there's a few bodies which hand out these ratios.
Okay.
So it's like somebody might find a company being halal according to one screening criteria, and then someone else goes, no, this company is haram. And they start an argument. But in reality, there's different screening criteria for the actual stocks, which to see if they're halal or not. And the annoying thing is that even the HSBC, Global Islamic Equity Index Fund, the one that the majority of Muslims have in their pension, the screening is done by a company called Dow Jones, because that's the index that the fund is based on.
Mm-hmm.
However, HSBC have another world fund, and the screening isn't done by Dow Jones. It's done by MSCI. So it's like, so you might have some stocks in one which aren't in the other, even though they're both done by HSBC because they're using different screening criteria.
Yeah.
So you kind of get into a space where it does get a little bit complicated trying to find on the equity side. But away from that,
it is very complex. And actually, just to hone in on that, the ratios of debt basically, and why that's important, because you touched on it slightly, and I think it's important for people to understand. There is a preference for, actually, there's encouragement to avoid debt entirely, right? But so explain that ratio for companies and how leveraged they can be. And
well, depending on which screening body you look at, the leverage ratio is around 30 to 33%. So debt as a proportion of their pause, because it depends on the screening criteria and what company you look at. Some say total assets, others say market cap. And it actually makes a huge difference. Even when companies say market cap, some say market cap now, others say average over 12 months, others say average over 36 months. And I've seen screening apps out there, and a lot of them use different denominators, even when they're looking at the same screening ratio criteria.
Okay, that's interesting.
So it's like even a lot of the data out there that people are seeing is incorrect. And I think if there doesn't seem to be any kind of unification on that, there just seems to be, this is a business opportunity for us at MSCI, Dow Jones, at FTSE. Let's put out our own criteria and hope people use that instead.
Okay. But as a very simplified way for everyone to understand, there is a preference for the debt held by the company not to be too significant a portion of the value of the company, let's call it. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, it's a nice simple way of saying it.
And I think the reason for that is because if it's too highly leveraged with debt, there's increased risks on if the company was to go under, that the impact of it is far greater than just those involved within the company.
And the second layer is they're going to be involved in interest, because if you're a high amount of debt, it means you've probably got a lot of loans or outstanding bonds, etc. So you've been playing around with a lot more interest. So that's one thing to also try and avoid.
And another thing that you touched on earlier, the reason for a lot of these impermissibility is looking at the wider impact to society at large and the harms that it could cause. Would you say, is it too egalitarian to say that a lot of the thinking behind why things are or aren't Sharia compliant or considered Sharia compliant is because of the broader harms that they could cause?
Yeah, because one of the main things is like you often refer to as the maqasid of the Sharia, which is like the overarching aims of the Sharia. Like what is it they're trying to do? And there's kind of like 6 broad themes, and I'm not going to all of them now, but like It's about, protecting your family, your spouse, and community, etc. So what is the overarching aim that they're trying to achieve? Yes, we want to obviously include financial access to certain markets and increase wealth. But what's the aim? The aim is that we can grow wealth and still be compliant within our religion, so that we can, perhaps have a little bit more independence. But really, truly, it would be far better if we had, Muslim-owned companies that were following these rules from the beginning, and there was no grey area.
Yeah.
Because at the moment we're still in that transition period.
Yeah.
Where
there's a lot of concessions being
exactly,
made.
and there's a lot of discomfort there with those concessions, naturally, which is a difference of opinion. Some people might say, no, you know what? Because those rules that like Ahmed has talked about, there's not complete consensus on them. There will be, many bodies that will say, you know what, we don't agree with this. We don't agree with investing into stocks that are in those that have any sort of level of impermissible income, any level of debt.
Yeah, fair.
I slightly disagree. The way I see things, it's like that question that you get sometimes. Oh, why is pork haram?
Yeah.
Because it's not gonna kill you, and then you might say, oh, it's a dirty animal, it eats filth, and then you could say to that, well, what if you just feed it lab grown food and it's like in a sterile environment? Are you allowed to eat it then? And what if you inspect the meat under a microscope to make sure it's got no bacteria in it and it's been sterilized? Are you allowed to eat it then? And then whatever reason you give, they can keep coming back and more and more. I think a lot of this stuff when it comes to religion, and I think we have to put a slight circle around the whole interest thing because it's not specifically mentioned in the Quran, that's why it's open to interpretation, is the Quran and Allah has come down with rules.
Yeah.
And our number one job is to follow them. There's a lot of rules I don't understand.
Yeah.
But because I have the conviction in the belief,
yeah,
whatever it is after that, I think is a test for me.
Yeah.
If I think it's right or if I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
The main thing for me is that I'm convinced in the actual message and the main part of it. Whatever secondary or tertiary reason, be it good, be it bad, I'll accept it because I might not know the reason for it. I mean, my colleagues come and say to me, oh, interest, look at the UK. We borrowed a lot of money, we're growing, we're doing great. Look at America, they borrowed a lot of money, they're going great guns. Look at the Middle East with its Islamic rules pulling it back or something like that. But I don't know. I just think it's one of those things more. But of course, that I do believe that with every rule there is some knowledge to it, but we may not know the actual reason for it. And if there isn't a reason, there's no reason.
Yeah. So that's a really inspiring level of conviction, right? And long may you stay steadfast, inshallah, and may we all, right? But not everyone, and we all should have that level of conviction that if we don't have the wisdom for something yet, but there are rules in place that we know exist, we follow them, right? And it takes a level of conviction to do that. Do you think, and this is quite a loaded question, like in the West in particular, or maybe even locally in the UK, that we've created so many concessions that if we don't understand something because we lack the wisdom, we're like, oh, like it's fine, let's just bend the rules a little bit. Do you think that's where the community's gone?
It's a really tough one. What I would say is one of the nice things that I think is happening now, especially within the UK, is we are no longer having like individual scholars, and there's a bit of a movement towards bodies. And I think when you have a body of scholars, and you've got to respect, like the scholars have studied and they really put the time and effort in to get into these positions. When you have a scholarly body, you can imagine it's going to be like, there's going to be big arguments to make sure to get to the correct outcome.
Yeah.
And when it's like, trusted scholars in these bodies, I think then it's easy to have faith as an individual, because then you're like, you know what, it's not just one sheikh that signed off on this thing. It's actually a whole entire body. And they've obviously gone through like a really deep dive audit of whether this is credit worthy or not.
Yeah.
So that's safer for the person. But at the time being, it's a tricky one. You might just take the easier option because one sheikh has said it's okay.
Yeah.
I think one interesting thing is that Omar said, "Amen." He said this thing, and I'm going to paraphrase here. So he said that the Islamic finance industry isn't halal for any and all times. It's concessions made for the time and place that we live in. And one of the things that seemingly a lot of concessions has been made around is with regards to the Islamic version of bonds, which are sukuk, and another area might be Islamic savings accounts. They are not perfect products. But the idea was always, and there's this other contract in Islamic finance called commodity murabaha, which also when you start looking at it, you go, oh, wow, that's weird. How is that allowed? But anyway, it is allowed.
Mortgages, right, as well?
Yeah, perhaps even mortgages and the way they're structured. Everyone's like, It's the same thing. You just slap the label on it. And even the article today in the FT, it was talking about Sukuk and how they're trying to change the rules to make them even more Islamic. And this is a problem now. Everyone got so used to the easy rules, which were introduced to kind of grow Islamic finance, that no one wants to change it. We like the old rules of Islamic finance because they were only 10% of the way there.
Yeah.
We don't want to change it to make it a little bit more strict now.
Yeah.
And that might even be the problem with Islamic savings accounts, which are not 100% of the way there.
Yeah.
I don't think. Maybe others would disagree with me, but I don't think they are.
Yeah.
It's a stepping stone in the right direction. I think even if there was a bank which labels itself as an Islamic bank, and all it did was not invest in, some bad industries like the gambling industry, that would be enough for me to move my money there, even if they didn't do anything else, because it's doing something right.
Yeah.
Can we expect a bank which is like 100% Islamic and do everything right? No, we can't. But should we try and move in that direction? I think we should, even if it's not 100% there. But the worry is that you get used to the easy thing that we have now, and then when they start to get a bit more strict and we move to 100% Sharia compliancy, that's when everyone's stumped. They're like, oh, I got used to it the nice way.
See, it's so interesting, and I think it's an important point to make, and this is why I come back to the fact that I think everyone has a different level of accountability. Ultimately with Allah, right? And it's actually based on your individual circumstances and opportunities. I'm not trying to create hard and fast flexibility for everyone. I mean, we know what's right and wrong, right? But I mean, for someone who has a greater level of understanding, let's say the three of us, right? We are online teaching people about money, right? I believe that there's a greater level of accountability on us than another Muslim who is not engaging in this way and maybe doesn't have the same level of understanding with money, and actually but maybe as a result there's less of an inclination for compromises for us, right? That's my personal take, right? And the reason I say that as well is because we've we've come out of a generation of a lot of compromises when it comes to like how to handle our money, because there was a lack of options. Now we're in a generation where there is a lot more options coming to the table, but I think, like you said, people edge towards the easy option. Well, this was allowed, like our parents did it, and our grandparents, they had no choice, so they had to do it. Therefore, we must be able to do it as well, because if they did it, they were religious when they grew up. They did it, so it must be okay for us. I think there's a lot of that attitude which we have to kind of shake.
But it's hard.
It's
really
hard
because what is, when you're shaking it, what's the ultimate impact?
Yeah.
Less money in your pocket.
Exactly.
Like, you've got a more expensive house product because you're not taking the traditional mortgage. It's less money in your pocket, and that's a hard thing to deal with. It is just going to be a mind shift, and I think education is going to be the crux of all of it. From an Islamic point of view, and just from a traditional understanding point of view. The big thing is no matter who we spoke to, like how educated they were, how wealthy, how poor, there was a real misunderstanding of basic financial products and financial knowledge in the market. I think as a culture, we've done really well in terms of improving our income. Alhamdulillah, the previous generation really emphasized on studying, working hard, going to good universities, good salaries, etc. But what we didn't emphasize is, there's income growth and then there's wealth generation.
100%.
And I think that's where we have been falling behind.
Yeah.
And you see now, 40-year-olds with £1 million in their ISAs, because it's just very basic principles that you just need to follow.
Yeah.
And we just never had those principles taught to us.
Yeah.
So with us, it was the education is let's try and include Muslims, and just so they can understand on a practical level what do we mean by investing?
Yeah.
And what are the different investments out there, and how can you start deciding what's right for you?
I think that we saw this study recently which said a lot of Muslims don't invest in their pension because they believe it's Sharia uncompliant. Maybe 78% of people who were Muslims and answered the survey who didn't invest in their pension. But that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
And I think even perhaps before, I mean, maybe we're talking 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't options. But now there are options for Muslims to go there well.
I think even going a step further back than that is the lack of education. We know that a lack of education around money exists in society at large. I think that's kind of compounded and magnified within the Muslim community, that there's an even greater lack of understanding when it comes to money. I've spoken to family members that have said to me, "Oh, I've opted out of my pension. I want the money now," and it was difficult to explain to them that no, you don't understand. This is you're missing out on free money, and it's being nurtured by the government as well. You're getting tax relief on it. Like they're like, no, I could do better with the money now. And it's like, there's such a long way behind.
Yeah.
And there's also like this emphasis, and even those that have made a lot of money, there's an emphasis on income and not quite understanding the difference between being rich now or like earning a high income and actually building wealth, which often happens over generations. So I do think there is a huge that gap in the education piece, which is, I guess, what gives rise to platforms like Nisba.
I think that's why the uptake has been so good, because the knowledge base was quite low, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't know this. I didn't know there were Islamic savings accounts. Oh, what's this a cook? Oh, do I have to? There are Islamic equity funds. Oh, that sounds great. What other options is there? Oh, there's all sorts of platforms now that offer options for Muslims.
Yeah.
What does Wahid do? How does it differentiate itself from, say, Nutmeg? There's a lot now to learn, and
there's been a lot of work in the space. Like, I think that you have to give credit to people like IFG and stuff. Like, they were really, I think, quite influential.
Yeah, they were quite pioneering.
Like, you know, one of the earliest people that I probably followed in the UK. It gave me a good dose of, okay, there's options here.
But even the UK as a whole have somewhat been quite receptive to Islamic finance.
Yeah.
Like the UK is one of the few countries in the world which isn't an Islamic country, which has actually issued a sukuk.
Yeah.
So Islamic way of raising money.
So by the time this episode comes out, it's going to be the middle of Ramadan. So I hope for those participating, you're having an amazing Ramadan so far. And I hope you have an amazing end to your Ramadan. I hope it's accepted. And I hope that this month has brought you everything that you've been seeking. We know that for us, Ramadan is a time not just of fasting and abstaining from food and other worldly pleasures, but actually a big component of Ramadan is about giving, and actually charitable giving is a huge part of Muslims during Ramadan. I think there's loads of stats to show that as a community, Muslims give the most charity amongst all groups, particularly in the UK, and a lot of that actually happens in this month, and that's because we know how much giving in charity is encouraged. A lot of people actually pay their Zakaat during Ramadan, so if that's something that you're planning on doing, the guys at Nisba have actually released their brand new Zakaat calculator. So you can go in and calculate specifically based on what your portfolio is structured like, where you're keeping your money, how much Zakaat it is that you need to pay. So go onto their website. We'll put the links in this episode, and you can access that. Back to the episode.
Like, the big thing with money is it's not ours.
Yeah.
It doesn't belong to us.
That's a great.
We're custodians. You know, we're simply looking after it. And it's just like a funny, like we're coming into Zakaat season, and even myself, I'm really trying to remind myself, like, you know, but you're about to give away a significant piece of money. It's not a tax. It's not my money. It's not. I shouldn't feel as if it's a chore. I need to get over that hump. And it's a case of, you know what, this money belongs to the poor.
Yeah.
I was just holding on to it.
Yeah.
You know, I was allowed it, and I was entrusted with it for the last year. Now it's time to give it back to them. And it is difficult, because when you live in the West, you're like, got to make more.
Yeah.
And then, at the same time, you're like, well, what is this all for? Like, ultimately, what is this all for? This is just a big distraction.
Yeah.
Like, it's so temporary and so fleeting.
So true. It's so true. And I think having that spiritual relationship and understanding underpinning a lot of our decision making and our relationship with money is really important. But I guess, how would you, if you were to speak to just say an audience of young Muslims, right? How would you advise them to approach their relationship with their money, knowing what you know now, but maybe giving them a bit of foresight, and they haven't yet made the mistakes that we may have made?
I think there's nothing wrong with starting early with education. I mean, even if you don't have the money, one thing I think that young people have as an issue is that, I don't have enough money to invest.
Yeah.
I got maybe £200 here, £300 here, or they get really excited, and now the new big thing on the scene is crypto. Let me chuck it into crypto, because there I can make good money. But the reality is that if you start early and you start investing in the right way, you will avoid so many of the mistakes of the people that, you know, we were in your position 10 years ago. We put money, maybe crypto was very early back then, and we weren't so hard on crypto, but you know, I wish I could go back to myself 10 years ago and say, whoa, stop there. Just do a little bit of education first. Learn how to invest. And even if you're making those marginal gains of 8, 9% a year, 3, 4, 5% a year, in the long run, it can grow if you are disciplined around it. And the whole, even if we go away from investing, even if we go back to the very basics of money and how to budget, and what to save, what to spend, what you need to spend money on. I think the idea of controlling your spending, even if you are earning, even if you come out of university, you get a great tech job and you're on 100k or whatever at Jane Street, just the idea of being able to humble yourself down, bring yourself like down a level and think, okay, let me control what I'm spending here and limit what I'm spending there.
The only thing people are going to take away from this whole episode
100K.
is let me go work for Jane Street. Let me go find a job at Jane Street.
I think it's slightly more than 100k as well.
And yeah, I think the relationship money, I think, is really like twofold. Is one, don't convince yourself that as a Muslim you need to remain poor. Like it's the opposite of that. If we were wealthy and we still had our like ethical and our spiritual standpoint, we could do so much good. Like so
Absolutely.
much good. Like we would not be reliant. Like if our, let's say we work, like we had, you know, big companies. If we were working, our company turned around and said, oh, we're going to start doing this thing, and you know, okay, cool, do that. I'm going to leave. I'm not reliant upon you. There's 100 other Muslim businesses I can work for that I align with.
Yeah.
So I think don't be afraid of making money, and you should strive for it as long as your intention is pure, and do good with it. So definitely educate yourself early or late, wherever it is, like now.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, for all of us, we have to constantly like renew our intention and remind ourselves it's not ours.
Yeah.
It's not ours.
Yeah.
Like it's really not ours.
Yeah. I think that's a really important way to reframe our thinking when it comes to managing our money. And I think that the big thing that I've been hearing a bit more now, and I think as a generation we're probably breaking down this notion of poverty being piety, which absolutely should be challenged, by the way. And I think that's a concept that actually is un-Islamic as well. Like people assuming, oh, you know, like I'm poor, this is... And there's great... If that was destined for you, I think there's great honor in that. But it's not something that should be strived for either, because it might be written for you to have more money and, as you said, to be a custodian of more money and then deploy it in the right way. And I think that's something that generationally maybe we're beginning to challenge a bit more, but actually it means there's more money to be utilized in the ummah as well. So really challenging that notion of actually wealth building can be, like we said at the start, an ibadah in itself if done with the right intentions, because then that gives you more options to be able to utilize.
Just think like if we genuinely had like bigger Muslim businesses, think about like how we could completely change the charity industry. Like we wouldn't no longer need to go to all the masajid and say like, I'm collecting for this cause and this cause, this cause. It could be we're hiring for this business and 50% of all the profits go to these causes. Yeah. And you're no longer having to, you know, potentially always ask. If we created like sustainable models and we were like much more entrepreneurial minded, we could do a lot. Yeah.
There's this concept in Islam, and I struggle with it. So you know the things that you practice, something you preach something you don't practice. I'm going to be this. But I was teaching my kids the other day. I was telling them, you know, everything's written for you. Yeah. Your money is written for you. You choose how you make it. So you don't have to chase doing it in the wrong way. And I think it hits me harder than them, because a lot of my life I've chased money the wrong way, which I shouldn't have done, because it's written for me. But I do think it's perhaps a mindset of the older generation. Whoa, no. We came to this country with no money. You got to do whatever it takes. You got to stay in this job. Or you got to do this. You got to do. And I think this generation, our generation, does kind of get it a bit more. There is more opportunities in this country, and you can do good doing something which is in line with your religion. Yeah. You don't have to go into banking. You don't have to go into certain industries. There is going to be something for you there if you're good at it. There are so many options now.
And I think, again, like you said, it's having a bit more conviction, and it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, so difficult.
And one of the great leading principles, faith-based principles that we have is as well, if you give up something that's bad, right, for the sake of Allah, right, you replace it with something better. And again, we say all of these things, but in practice, it's obviously much more challenging.
But you had that YouTube video you watched the other day.
Yeah, it's another one that I think. My friend, I had a story with my friend once, and he goes, there was something in the Quran about the heart and its emotion, its feelings or emotions, and then he goes, oh, what's the stuff in the Quran where it says about the heart feeling or thinking, but then there was some scientific research about some memory cells in the heart or something, and he goes, it's so annoying that I didn't believe it when I heard it in the Quran. Yeah. And then the other concept which I saw was, there's this Islamic concept which when you give charity, it makes you richer. And then I was like, nah, no, it doesn't. Until this video came out, which I saw, this research.
Yeah.
There was
I know the video you're talking about as well. There's some guy who talks about tithing as well.
And I thought, wow, giving charity does actually make you richer. And it's shown by the Western research. I believe that.
It's bad, isn't it?
It's bad, but I didn't
really
believe
bad.
it when it said it in the Quran.
Yeah.
It's so like...
With the charity thing, honestly, that's something that I've always been told. And I think I had good like familial experiences with that because my parents were always, or my mum especially, she was always like, okay, make sure you give as much sadaqah as possible. You'll see it come. It's a purification of your wealth. And I've had so many instances where it's honestly crazy. It's almost like I play a game with myself. There's been times because you, especially around Ramadan, you hear all these experiences like when it's hard, you should give more, right? And I've had instances where I'm like, I know this is true. Like, I should have just had more faith, where I've given a small amount in charity in the same day I've had it replaced. Like, and it's insane. It's insane. But I think it's the detachment from money. From
with money is
you
know what, it's said that every prophet's nation has a trial.
Yeah.
And the trial of the Prophet ﷺ is wealth.
Yeah.
That's the trial of his nation.
Yeah.
And it is like it's our trial every day, whether it's with our spouse, whether it's with our parents, whether it's with our work and how we spend it, etc. It's just something that's always on our mind.
Yeah.
It's such a big thing. But yeah, the charity one's quite cool. I had one of my mashayikh was giving like a great thing that he was doing with his kids. I was like, let me try it. And basically what he said is like, they did something really good and he was rewarding them with money. But he's like, what I then did is I asked him a question. I was like, look, here's £10 because you earn £10 fair and square.
Yeah.
Would you like to keep it all or would you like to give a little bit to charity?
Yeah.
And I actually did this with my nephews. So we were playing basketball in the garden. I was like, if any of you can score over me, I'll give you a £5.
Yeah.
And they scored.
Yeah.
And one of them got like £10. And he's only like 5 years old.
Oh, wow. Mashallah. He scored over you.
Yeah. I let him. And anyway, so he scored. At the end of it, I was like, look, here's £10. But given what's going on in the world, obviously he doesn't understand.
Yeah.
But I was like, would you like to keep it or would you want to give it to some poor kids?
Yeah. And
you just give a little bit. And he's like, no, what? Give it all of them. And I was like,
wow,
mashallah, amazing.
Wow.
And I do think as a community, we are really good with charity.
100%.
Like we're amazing, generally speaking. But I think installing it into kids, and what I want to do with my son is like, okay, you got 5 toys, you have to give away one of them every month. Yeah. Like they, 25%. Yeah. Or whatever, a bit less, 20%, sorry. Yeah. Get rid of it. And just constantly just getting that habit from young. Yeah. So, 20%, always remove it.
So I guess for people listening and that don't understand, what is it about our faith that encourage? What is our encouragement when it comes to charity? So let's say Zakat. How does Zakat work for Muslims?
Zakat is a purification of your wealth. So it's 2.5% of your net zakatable assets, which is actually a hotly debated topic again. So we won't go into the technicalities of it. That you have to give away once every Islamic calendar year, actually slightly different from the Gregorian calendar. And it's an idea that wealth isn't yours. Yeah. It wasn't yours in the first place. And it's funny because it was one of those things where, you're a Muslim and then you start praying 5 times a day and then you think, oh, I forgot about this pillar, which is Zakat. And I think, oh, and it wasn't something I paid attention to many, many years. It was like, oh, Zakat, it's number 5. But I think it's actually quite an important one. Yeah. And even the act of calculating how much you need to give away each year is an act of ibadah, even though it can be quite stressful to calculate it. And it's not something which is mandatory on every single Muslim, no matter the situation. Yeah. You have to be above a certain level of wealth. Yeah. And that money can only go to certain places and help certain causes. It's not like it can be given to anyone.
The main concept is that we have the honor of redistributing Allah's wealth. Yeah. And we give it to certain causes that are very clearly, like said, whether it's the poor, etc., and the needy. And it is something that it's really hard, and I don't even myself, but I would love to get to a point where I'm excited for it every year. Yeah. Just thinking about the concept, oh my God, I can actually genuinely help this many people. Yeah. Like that would be such a nice mentality to adopt.
But you know what I found? I found that because different assets have different zakat calculations, like for example equities, technically you only use 25% of the value. And I was like, one of the assets that's doing quite well recently is gold. And I thought, oh, gold is 100% zakatable. That's going to up my zakat.
Let me rearrange my portfolio to be more zakat efficient advisor.
So I thought, oh, now I'm getting all these thoughts in my head. Just maybe I should buy it now. Let me do it after Ramadan. I just feels like, oh, I'm doing it the wrong way again. But
it's true. So there's a portion of our wealth each year, each Islamic year that we have to tithe effectively towards charitable causes. Which is a broad umbrella, and there's detail into what that includes, and it could actually be people that are needy nearer to us at home. It could even be in the family, right? But people that need it more than you, or causes that are acceptable within the parameters of zakat. And that's something that we do every year, in addition to any of our, let's say, secular taxes that we have to pay as well. But actually, that we're supposed to see that as a great honor, as you said, that that money never belonged to us, and it's something that we have to tithe away. And actually, nations before us had a greater amount that they used to have to give away as well. So it's not an entirely new concept. Maybe in modern capitalist society, it seems crazy to give your money away of your choosing, but we see it as like a great honor to.
I don't know if you ever had this, like when you used to go to like Jumu'ah prayers, like with your dad, and like sometimes he'd give you a $5 and say go put it in a bucket.
Yes.
But you'd feel really honoured.
Yeah.
And that's what it should feel like.
Yeah.
Like Allah has given me this money and I'm going to go put it in the bucket.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's what, like, yeah.
And touching on what we said earlier, that we believe that actually it increases your wealth. What do you think the psychology behind that is? Because the way I look at it is because you have, therefore, a mindset where you're like, I can part with this money and I know that I'll make more or I'll get more in some way. Obviously, there's a spiritual undertone to what we believe as well. But I think there's an element of like, it's fine. I can do away with this money. I'll just make more. Do you think there's anything else attached to it that means people are increasing their wealth by giving it away?
Good question.
I don't know if there is anything attached to it, and maybe there doesn't need to be. I think for me, the idea of really, I'm a very logical thinker. I don't know if this is a real thing or if I've just convinced myself that I am a logical thinker, but in my mind, logic tells me if I give away my money, I am now poorer. That's how my brain works on a very basic level. And sometimes we're thinking, like even when we're giving it away now, what we're all discussing is, oh, it's going to make me richer in this life. Oh, nice. This is what I want.
It's true. Okay.
But then you've got the wrong idea again, because it's not about this life.
Yeah.
And I think you realize it more and more as you get older that that money wasn't all that actually, and why did I work so hard all those years, and what was it for? And maybe just the appreciation of the reward that it gives you.
And there's also like, and not to maybe this will be convincing for you, but bringing some of the Western ideals to actually for all of us to the act of giving. They say, and you might have experienced this yourself as well. There's a greater sense of like fulfillment when you're actually able to gift or do something for other people than to buy something for yourself. For most people, I don't know, like, but actually when you both have children as well, and I'm sure often when you're able to like buy something for your kids, it's much more fulfilling.
I'm so tight with him. I'm just like, I don't want this child to be spoiled. I'm not buying him anything.
But in general, I think it's the idea of being able to do something for others. People feel the greater sense of fulfillment and reward. I think it's partly like feeling needed or like you're able to provide value as well. There's elements of that come into it.
Yeah, there definitely is a nice feeling when you give away money. Like, I think to a good cause. Like, I think there's definitely a nice feeling.
And that's one thing you'll be able to do more if you invest your money.
Yeah, you can help more.
And I think that's actually one of the ways that investing helps, because it kind of puts your money away.
Yeah.
Like one thing that people start to do when they budget is pay your bills, put your money away in savings and investments, and then that's the rest that you have for you, and then you can see your wealth grow. When you have that, one thing it does actually is there's a lot of stress that comes with not having enough money or not having enough savings. Stress at the family, stress at home, stress at work. Oh, I have to work this day, I have to work that day. But if you cut your consumption in certain areas, it's mad the effects that it can have on you in a positive way. And I think one real big thing that's been pushing a lot on people, and I was talking to my colleague today about it, is the way social media pushes stuff on you. Like sometimes I go to upload a video on TikTok or Instagram. I open it, and then the video just pops up, and then I scroll to the next one and the next one, and then half an hour in, and I go, oh wait a second, I'm here to upload a video. It's mad. Not to be watching. And the way that things are sold to you these days, oh, I want to buy this, and I want to buy that, and I want to buy this. It's just everyone's doing such a good job at selling.
It's hacked our behaviors because we're very simple, right? We're like, oh, okay, I get this reward. Oh, that felt good. Dopamine. Oh, I'll do that again. I'll do that again. And we're very simple. But there's thousands of people that have been able to hack our behaviors and constantly like feeding us distractions. So I think I made a video on this recently about just saying like the game's rigged. We weren't like ever designed to win this game. Actually, It's just going to be full of distractions. A quick shout to thank our sponsors for this episode, PensionBee. As a leading online pension provider, PensionBee is on a mission to build pension confidence and create a world where everyone can enjoy a happy retirement. PensionBee offers a range of pension plans to suit different needs, including a tracker plan, which follows the global markets, a climate plan, which invests in companies actively reducing their carbon emissions, and a Sharia-compliant pension option. Their plans allow you to align your retirement savings with your values. If you're self-employed, PensionBee has you covered too. Their flexible pension plans are designed with you in mind, allowing you to contribute as much or as little as your income allows. You're in complete control of your retirement savings, and signing up only takes a few minutes. With PensionBee's easy-to-use app and website, you can combine your old pensions, make contributions, and even withdraw your money when the time comes. So if you're ready to take control of your retirement savings, download the PensionBee app today. And remember, as with all investments, your capital is at risk. Thanks again to PensionBee for supporting this episode. Now back to the episode. So I've seen both of your faces a fair amount, maybe Ahmed's a bit more, on my social media. And I was like, whoa, there's some real good value, some real good information here. And then came to learn about Nisba, the platform that you've been building. But tell us a little bit more about it. Why did you launch it? What is it aimed at doing?
The concept is like education will be the thing that unlocks Muslims' potential.
Yeah.
And how can we deliver it in a way that hasn't previously existed? And I think the key thing for us is let's make it practical. Let's base it on all the providers out there. And when the new one pops up, let's put our money in. Let's test it out ourselves.
Yeah.
And let's give the people like a true verdict on like how we've experienced it.
Yeah.
And that's what people like. That's what people trust, I think. And I think then for us at the moment, because we're not attached to any brand, it's a case of, okay, well, these guys are genuinely being objective.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you run that risk of when you have a product at the end of it,
Yeah.
it just feels like a big funnel.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to give you education, but I'm going to steer it a little bit towards my product, and make it sound a little bit better.
Yeah.
One issue I saw with a lot of other Islamic finance, not to knock them, they're all doing a good job, but they might start a video with the difference between mudaraba and musharaka structures in a mortgage, and it's like, this is very technical. A lot of people just want to know how to do it and what the options are available.
Yeah.
Going into in depth, this is an Islamic fund, this is an Islamic fund, what are the differences between them? How do you purify your wealth when you receive a dividend income? What's a Sukuk fund? What's an Islamic savings account? How can you actually access them? It's a lot more practical, I think, what we talk about than other stuff that I've seen.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we didn't even have that concept when we started. I just thought, what's the easiest thing to make content on? Because I'm actually investing my money in this stuff. I just talk about what I'm actually investing my money into.
Yeah.
And I always say, neither Adam nor I are shuyukh. We are not Islamic scholars.
Yeah.
I know my stuff when it comes to finance. Adam knows his stuff when it comes to finance. But we do.
It makes it much more relatable how you've done it. So I think, because again, seeing the videos where you're like, well, we're putting our money where our mouth is, right? We're going to experiment with our own money and invest into these products and test them for you. So it's a financial education platform, but you're actually showing people how to do this stuff directly, targeted at Muslims. But I think a lot of the principles I've noticed, I've shared it with people that aren't Muslim as well. That just brought, maybe it's just light dawah as well, isn't it? Yeah. get that reversion bonus. But yeah, it's a financial education platform targeted at a niche audience, but actually has incredible value outside of that because you're talking about broad financial concepts, and which are quite technical a lot of the time. But I think what's been good is because you then show stuff, it's quite easy to follow along the more technical for those that aren't as savvy concepts, because you're showing people the results as well.
Yeah, I think Ahmed will attest to it because he does most of the social media stuff. Like the technical stuff, unfortunately, doesn't do that well. People don't have time for that. They don't switch onto it. The one thing that I think, like I'm genuinely quite proud of, is we do like a free webinar, like once a month. And when we first did it, it was almost like 3 hours long. They had like 14 people. One was his wife, his father-in-law, and one was my brother. So we had like 8 audience members. But like since then, alhamdulillah, now we're getting like 200-300 people signing up every time.
Yeah.
And it's a case of, I genuinely believe we're moving the needle in terms of education. Like people are coming from a point of where they've heard all of this stuff like, an ISA sounds haram. What the hell is an equity fund? I've opted out of my pension. And I think by the end of like an hour and a half, they're now at like a decent place where they understand the basics and they can actually ask a reasonable question.
Yeah.
Because before that, all the questions just don't make sense.
Yeah.
Because the knowledge is just everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're saying like, what's the difference between an equity fund and a stocks and shares ISA? And it's like you're comparing a shopping basket to bananas.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But you know what? Education is not for everyone. We say we do a lot of education, but some people, what they genuinely want, they just want to give their money to someone,
100%.
not worry about it.
100%.
They don't mind paying a bit more for it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that's one route I would love to go down, like the advice, the management route.
Yeah.
But one of the struggles we faced pushing down that path is doing it all in a Sharia compliant way from day one.
Yeah.
Because getting that FCA approval is expensive. Having the experience for it is difficult before you've ever done it.
Yeah.
And then you get knocked back at every step of the way. And even when you're kind of registering under another kind of financial advisory firm, let's take St. James's Place, one of the biggest financial advisors in the UK. They don't have any Sharia compliant products.
Mm-hmm.
Either the other ones, I spoke to another one. Oh yeah, you can join us. We only have one Islamic equity fund. I said, what? What am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do with that with my clients?
Yeah.
I can't just put them in one fund.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite difficult to.
It's also hard to convince people to part with their money.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. And I think, which is why you'll see like some amazing like fund managers at the moment, or even let's say Curate, IFG guys, they've sort of like created an amazing way for Muslims to invest as well in a Sharia compliant way. But a lot of their investments, actually, I know I've seen you guys have actually put some of your money into it as well. They target more high net worth individuals, right? Or people that are ready to part with that kind of money and not have to liquidate for a long period of time. It's for the masses, and the reason some of the technical stuff doesn't do well is people have no idea what you're talking about.
They're not ready for it.
People are still, like you said, people don't know what an ISA is, right? They don't understand the idea of a tax wrapper. They don't understand these concepts. And the education piece is so important. And that's one of the early things that we learned as well, is that as soon as you become a bit financially literate, you forget how far behind most people are, and you have to take them up the curve before you can get them high enough to be like, oh my God, I actually need to do something with my money.
Yeah, and trying to understand them from a business point of view is super tough, because we've got so many different clients and so many different points of knowledge. Yeah, how do you cater for them all?
One annoying thing as well when it comes to financial education, especially in the UK, is because there's taxes everywhere. Yeah. There's all sorts of different wrappers like a SIPS and an ISA, and all the different types of ISA. And now the government's thinking, oh, we should simplify the ISA process, or maybe we should introduce a UK ISA where people can only invest in UK stocks and shares. So they want to simplify it. The UK government wants to simplify the process, but at the same time, it's becoming a little bit more complicated. And the truth is, the rules change. With every government, the allowances that you can have for capital gains tax, for dividend tax, it changes. The bars are moving, more taxes being taken here. There's different things that you can and can't invest in. Even there was this thing the other day on the news about how a lot of ISA providers were letting people buy certain shares in their ISA which were not ISA applicable, and then they didn't even know the rules. So it's like, oh, you might teach someone about what pension investing is, how much you're allowed to grow your pension to, how much you can take out tax-free, and then by the time the next government comes in, it's all changed. The inheritance tax rules have changed. So it's a bit annoying, but if you've got that base level of knowledge, then when the budget comes out, and with Rachel Reeves, she might talk about it
with the briefcase.
Then you can actually watch it and actually know what she's saying. Yeah. And it's actually quite enjoyable. Oh my God, you're changing that. You're changing the inheritance tax rule for pensions. That's a big thing. Yeah. That's a big thing.
And how's that going to impact me?
How's that going to impact me? But nowadays, most people, oh no, I'm not watching her speak about it.
People are so far behind the curve, right? And I think part of the skill is actually having to understand, I have all this knowledge. How can I communicate this to those that are terrified of this knowledge and be able to understand it? But is there any products that you guys have to help people that you'd recommend?
I think the first step for most people is, if you've got little knowledge, we have a free event, like once a month, typically speaking. It's online, it's on Zoom. It's a real introduction to Sharia compliant investing. Yeah. And even if you think you've got knowledge, I'd still recommend coming, because I can guarantee
I've signed up.
Okay.
You've probably seen my email twice, and then I couldn't show up, and then I got the recording.
Yeah. So we have that. We have a book that we update very regularly. It's like a guide, not a book.
Guide. Hopefully, we'll try to make it into a book.
Yeah, but it's just thing is, we want to make sure it's always up to date. Like someone said to us, "Oh, can you do a section about investing for your kids, like the junior ISA, the JISA?" We're like, well, we didn't actually have that in there. Cool, let's update it and send it out to everyone. When you make it a physical book, you lose that element of tweaking it.
Yeah.
We are going to start doing like courses and pre-recorded courses. It just sounds so salesy.
Yeah.
But the reality is, people need education.
100%.
Someone has to provide it.
Yeah, don't downplay the value of it. And I think that's important because, like I said, even you were talking about quiet superfans earlier. Like, I've benefited hugely from your content. Like, and I know maybe because you guys have like exploded onto the scene quite quickly, you don't. It's still like, oh, this is a bit naff. I don't want to talk about our stuff too much. But it's hugely valuable. Have you got anything down the line coming that you would recommend people to look out for?
Well, we have our Zakat calculator coming out, and we made a Zakat guide, so that's quite nice. The one issue I found with a lot of Zakat, there's loads of Zakat calculators online. Yeah. We don't need another Zakat calculator, but a lot of them miss out some assets that a lot of people invest into, and there's different rules for different things actually, and some things that there are no rules for that no one has come up with, like a Sukuk fund. No one has actually given a zakatable amount for a Sukuk fund because different types of Sukuk have a different zakat allowance for them. It's so technical. It gets super technical. But we tried to make a really in-depth calculator, but making it as simple as possible for the modern Muslim investor who invests in different platforms like Nesta, Equities, Curate, Venture Capital.
Gold.
We have it all there. So that
Nisba.co.uk.
I would say that is a good summary of what your brand achieves, is that taking these, first of all, managing money and understanding money and investing can be complex enough for most people without then the added layer of being Muslim, right? Yeah. And all the complexities that then come with it. And you guys have taken a lot of that and practically been able to explain it in a way that's simple and easy enough for people to follow, and I'm sure in the products that you're producing as well, I think it's creating ease for people basically, because they're terrified of this information anyway, and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know how to engage with it. But it's, again, that's the value that I think you guys will and already are providing, making it easy for people to be Muslim and manage their money.
Alhamdulillah, like I say. Alhamdulillah, yeah. If that's what we're doing, then that's a good thing.
It's hard. I don't think we reflect on what we do.
Yeah.
Because you're just so deep in it and in the hole, and you're just like, there's more to do, there's more to do, there's more to do. Yeah, alhamdulillah, inshallah, it's helped some people.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope it continues to help.
Definitely. Well, there's one thing that we like to do to finish our episodes, which we leave everyone with a parting thought. It can be very silly. It can be profound. We basically ask for a bit of loose change from our guests. If there's anything that you can think of that you'd like to leave our audience with.
Do you have anything? Just for us.
Yeah.
My only thing is completely unrelated to like this.
Yeah.
One really good book that I've read recently. It's called The Barakah Effect.
Okay. Who's it by?
And I've forgotten his name.
I'll look it up.
He's got two books. Anyway, they're both amazing, but The Barakah Effect, incredible.
Okay.
Like one of those books that you should probably read once a year.
Yeah.
Just to remind yourself of all the gems. Amazing.
I like that. I like book recommendations. Barakah Effect.
I don't have a book recommendation. For me, I don't know. The funny thing with me is I realize a lot of stuff when I'm talking to my kids.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff which they just make sense to me because I'm saying it to seemingly young versions of me. Yeah. Even stuff when it came to the concept of God, and I had there was a picture on the wall that they coloured in. I go, who coloured that in? And I've always had I used to have like this big complex with, where did God come from and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then when I started explaining it to them, I said, kind of makes sense because I have to explain it to them now. I have to tell them all this stuff. And after I told my kid the thing about your wealth is written for you.
Yeah.
You figure out a way to get there. I said to my daughter afterwards, I said, you know why I told you that story? I said, I told you it for me. I need to hear that. That's why I teach it to you. But I need to keep saying it to myself to the point where I fully believe in it. Then it doesn't matter what I do. I might as well do the best thing I can possibly do because whatever wealth I'm written will come to me.
Yeah.
And the other day we were trying to move the business in a certain direction, and there was a big hiccup, and I was really sad by it. I was actually really, really sad by it that this didn't manage to go through. But you never know what's best.
Yeah.
You never know what's best. And maybe there was a reason it didn't happen in that way, and it's supposed to go in a different direction. And alhamdulillah, so many different other things have come up since then. It's just you got to have the trust and keep going.
We plan and Allah plans.
Exactly.
We plan and Allah plans.
It's
Yeah.
quite nice. He sent that in an email to this like non-Muslim guy.
Really?
Yeah.
It's true though. And subhanallah, I think it's a good reminder to finish on. Actually, some of the best ways to learn is actually by teaching, and that's one of the things that we've realized in the stuff that we put out. It ingrains a lot of things when you're then relaying that information that you've learned, and it means you don't forget it. And I guess having children is a stark reminder of all of that.
Yeah.
But keep doing what you're doing. It's been hugely beneficial, and thank you so much for joining me.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, thank you.
Assalamu
Assalamu alaikum.